You know, for literally thousands of years, we've been wrestling with one of the biggest questions you can even ask. What are we, really? At our core, are people good? Are we evil? Or maybe something else entirely? In this explainer, we're going to dive into how some of the most brilliant minds in ancient Eastern philosophy tried to crack this very problem, and in doing so, created blueprints that would shape entire civilizations.
So let's just start right there. Seriously, take a second and think about it. What's your gut feeling? Because how you answer that question, well, it changes pretty much everything. It changes how you think we should build a government, how you'd raise your kids, and ultimately, how you'd structure a whole society.
All right, so let's get into our first big idea. We're about to see how just one starting assumption, are people basically good, evil, or just kind of selfish, can lead you down completely different roads, creating totally different blueprints for how we should all live together.
And to really see this in action, we're going to head back to ancient China. We're going to look at three powerful and competing philosophies that each came up with a master plan for society, all designed from the top down.
Okay, so let's kick things off with what might be the most pessimistic view of them all. What if you just assume that people, left to their own devices, are fundamentally selfish? What if you believe that without really strict control, everything is just going to fall apart into chaos?
Well, that gloomy assumption is the absolute bedrock of a philosophy called legalism. Thinkers like this guy, Han Feizi, basically said, look, forget trying to appeal to people's better nature. That's a total waste of time. For them, the only thing that actually works is a clear, unbending set of laws enforced by a ruler with absolute power.
And you can see exactly where that line of thinking leads. If the law is everything and morality is nothing, then you don't want people thinking for themselves, so intellectualism gets discouraged. To keep everyone in line, you need a ton of rules with really harsh punishments. And of course, you're going to need a powerful military because to the legalists, war was actually seen as a good thing. It was a tool to make the ruler even stronger.
But what's so fascinating is that even within Confucianism, the most influential philosophy of the era, there was this huge debate raging over the very same question. You had Mencius on one side and Hunzu on the other, and they were polar opposites.
So let's start with the optimist, Mencius. His whole idea was beautiful and simple. People are, by their very nature, good. He argued that things like compassion and a sense of justice aren't things that are drilled into us. No, they're part of our factory settings. So society's job isn't to force us to be good, but just to nurture the good that's already there.
And Mencius made this point with a really powerful analogy. He said, imagine you see a child about to fall into a well. Your immediate gut reaction is this jolt of alarm and a desire to help. You're not thinking about impressing the child's parents or getting a reward. It's just an instinct. And that instinct, he said, is the proof of our innate goodness.
But then you have Hun Sun Tzu, another Confucian scholar, who heard this and was basically like, hold on a minute. He argued the exact opposite, that our nature is actually self-interested, maybe even evil. He believed our natural desires and envies lead directly to conflict. So for Hun Sun, goodness wasn't something you were born with. Oh no, it had to be forged, like steel, through intense training, education, and strict rules.
So you've got these different camps, right? People are selfish and need control, or they're good and need nurturing, or they're bad but can be taught. But then another philosopher, Mo Tzu, came along and basically asked, guys, what if we're asking the wrong question entirely?
See, Mo Tzu was a really practical guy. He looked at all the problems in the world, war, famine, hate, and said this all stems from one simple thing. We care more about ourselves, our family, and our own country than we do about anyone else's. His solution was radical and totally pragmatic, universal love. Basically, just act as if you care about everyone else's family and country just as much as you care about your own. Simple as that.
Okay, so everything we've looked at so far has been about these big, top-down plans for society. But what if the answer isn't out there in the government or the law, but in here? This is where another major school of thought, Buddhism, completely changes the game. It turns the camera inward. The goal wasn't about fixing society, it was about mastering yourself.
What's so different about Buddhism is that it doesn't have a god telling you what's right and wrong. There are no divine commandments handed down from on high. Instead, the whole reason to be a good person is totally personal. It's all about your own journey to find enlightenment and escape from suffering.
And the engine that drives this whole journey? It's karma. Now, think of karma not as some cosmic judge handing out rewards and punishments. It's much more like a law of moral physics. Every action has a reaction.
Moral, skillful actions, that's kusala. They generate positive results that move you forward. And immoral, unskillful actions, akusala, well, they do the opposite.
So what's the destination? What are you moving towards? The ultimate goal is nirvana. This is a state of enlightenment, where you finally break free from samsara, this endless, painful cycle of death and rebirth. So you're not acting morally to please a god or get into heaven. You're doing it to generate the good karma you need to finally break that cycle and be free from suffering for good.
So, how do you actually get there? Well, Buddhism gives you a super practical guide, the 5 precepts. And it's better to think of these not as a list of don'ts, but more like a training regimen for your mind. Each one is designed to help you actively build up virtues like compassion and mindfulness, the very things that create good karma.
But it's not a one-size-fits-all path. Even within Buddhism, there are different approaches. You have the Theravada school, which really focuses on the individual's path to becoming an arhat, an enlightened being. It's a very personal journey to liberation. But then the Mahayana school introduces this incredible idea of the bodhisattva. This is someone who actually reaches enlightenment, but then, out of pure compassion, chooses to stay in the cycle of suffering to help every other living thing get there first. It's a huge shift from focusing on me to focusing on we.
So, we've walked through all these incredible, ancient ideas. What's the big takeaway here? Well, you start to see this fundamental tension, this deep conflict that runs through all of these philosophies between 2 totally opposing ways of looking at humanity.
When you really boil it all down, you're left with these 2 basic paths. On one side, you've got the path of the ruler, the way of the law. It assumes the worst in people and it uses fear and punishment to create order. But on the other side, you have the path of the sage, the way of virtue. It believes in the best of people and it uses compassion and education to guide us toward genuine harmony.
And you know, this isn't just some ancient history debate. We see this exact tension playing out right now, in our governments, in our schools, even in how we think about our own lives. So the question these brilliant thinkers left for us, one we still have to answer for ourselves, is this. When it comes to building a better world, where do we place our faith? In systems of control or in the power of human compassion?